My friends, God never intended for His children to live powerless, defeated, confused, or overwhelmed by the challenges of life. He has given us a divine advantage, the Holy Spirit. When we learn to pray in the Spirit, we tap into a supernatural realm where God's power begins to work in and through us in extraordinary ways. One of the greatest privileges God has given to believers is the ability to pray in the Spirit. This is more than a religious practice. It is a supernatural connection with the power of God. When you pray in the Spirit, you move beyond your natural limitations and enter into a deeper fellowship with the Holy Spirit. You are no longer depending solely on your own understanding, emotions, or abilities. Instead, you are allowing God to work through you in a powerful way. Many people face situations that seem impossible. They try to solve every problem with human wisdom and become discouraged when they cannot find answers. But when you pray in the Spirit, you connect with the One who knows all things. God's power begins to strengthen your inner being. Faith rises in your heart. Fear loses its grip. Doubt gives way to confidence. Praying in the Spirit is like plugging into a divine power source. It refreshes your spirit, sharpens your spiritual awareness, and helps you remain strong in the midst of life's battles. The more time you spend praying in the Spirit, the more sensitive you become to God's voice and His leading. Through this supernatural connection, God's power can flow freely into every area of your life. There are moments in life when words seem inadequate. Challenges arise that are too complex to understand, and situations develop where we simply do not know how to pray. This is where the ministry of the Holy Spirit becomes so precious. The Holy Spirit is not limited by human knowledge, emotions, or circumstances. He knows the mind of God and understands every detail of our lives, including things we cannot see or comprehend. When you pray in the Spirit, you are allowing the Holy Spirit to help you communicate with God beyond the limits of your natural understanding. Instead of relying only on your own thoughts, you are yielding to divine guidance in prayer. What may seem confusing to you is never confusing to God. The Holy Spirit knows the answer before the problem appears and sees the solution long before you recognize the need. This kind of prayer builds confidence because it reminds you that God is working even when you do not have all the answers. It removes the pressure of trying to figure everything out on your own. As you pray in the Spirit, peace begins to replace anxiety, faith rises above uncertainty, and your heart becomes aligned with God's perfect will. Through the Holy Spirit's help, your prayers become effective, powerful, and filled with divine purpose. One of the greatest benefits of praying in the Spirit is the strength it brings to your inner man. Life has a way of testing our faith, draining our energy, and challenging our confidence. Difficult circumstances, disappointments, and spiritual battles can leave us feeling weak if we rely only on our natural abilities. But God has provided a supernatural way for believers to be spiritually refreshed and strengthened. When you pray in the Spirit, you are building yourself up spiritually. Just as physical exercise strengthens the body, spiritual prayer strengthens your spirit. It develops endurance, increases your faith, and helps you remain steadfast during seasons of pressure. The more time you spend praying in the Spirit, the stronger your spiritual foundation becomes. A strong inner man is not easily shaken by bad news, setbacks, or opposition. While others may be overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, the believer who regularly prays in the Spirit can stand firm with confidence and peace. Strength begins to rise from within because God's presence is actively working in the heart. Praying in the Spirit also renews your spiritual passion. It keeps your relationship with God vibrant and alive. As your inner man grows stronger, you become more sensitive to God's voice, more confident in His promises, and more prepared to walk in the victory He has planned for your life. One of the greatest challenges believers face is knowing what to do when they stand at a crossroads in life. Decisions about family, ministry, career, relationships, and the future often require more than human reasoning. While knowledge and experience have their place, there are times when only God's wisdom can provide the right answer. This is why praying in the Spirit is so important. When you pray in the Spirit, you position yourself to receive divine wisdom and direction from God. The Holy Spirit knows the beginning from the end. He sees every detail of your future and understands the path that will lead you into God's perfect plan. As you spend time praying in the Spirit, your heart becomes more sensitive to His leading, and spiritual clarity begins to replace confusion. Many people make decisions based solely on emotions, pressure, or circumstances. However, those who pray in the Spirit learn to follow God's guidance rather than their own understanding. What once seemed uncertain becomes clearer as the Holy Spirit illuminates the way forward. Praying in the Spirit helps you avoid unnecessary mistakes and keeps you aligned with God's purpose. It brings peace when making important decisions and confidence when stepping into new opportunities. As you consistently pray in the Spirit, divine wisdom becomes a guiding light, leading you into greater effectiveness, purpose, and victory in every area of life. Every believer will face moments of fear, doubt, and spiritual opposition. Challenges may arise that seem larger than your faith, and circumstances may try to convince you that victory is impossible. The enemy often works through fear and discouragement, attempting to weaken your confidence in God's promises. However, one of the most powerful ways to overcome these attacks is through consistent Spirit-led prayer. When you pray in the Spirit regularly, you are strengthening your spiritual defenses. Fear begins to lose its influence because your focus shifts from the size of the problem to the greatness of God. Doubt is replaced with faith as you spend time in God's presence and allow His Spirit to encourage and strengthen your heart. Spirit-led prayer also helps you remain steadfast during seasons of opposition. Instead of reacting to challenges with worry or frustration, you learn to respond with faith and confidence. The Holy Spirit reminds you of God's promises and empowers you to stand firm when circumstances are trying to shake you. Victory is not achieved through human strength alone. It comes through dependence upon God and continual fellowship with the Holy Spirit. As you develop a lifestyle of Spirit-led prayer, you will discover greater courage, stronger faith, and the ability to overcome obstacles that once seemed impossible. What once intimidated you will no longer control you, because God's power will be working mightily within you. God's power is available to every believer, but it is most clearly manifested in the lives of those who willingly yield themselves to the Holy Spirit. The Christian life was never designed to be lived through human effort alone. God desires His people to depend upon His strength, His wisdom, and His guidance. When believers surrender their hearts and lives to the leading of the Holy Spirit, they position themselves to experience God's power in a greater way. Yielding to the Holy Spirit means being sensitive to His voice and willing to follow His direction. It involves trusting God's plan even when it differs from your own understanding. As you spend time praying in the Spirit and cultivating fellowship with God, your heart becomes more receptive to His leading. The Holy Spirit begins to shape your thoughts, guide your decisions, and empower your actions throughout life. There will be challenges that cannot be overcome by natural ability alone. But when God's power is at work within you, obstacles become opportunities for His glory to be revealed. Strength is provided in weakness, wisdom is given in uncertainty, and peace remains even during difficult seasons. The more you yield to the Holy Spirit, the more God's power can flow through your life. Your faith becomes stronger, your witness becomes more effective, and your life becomes a channel through which God's love, grace, and power can touch the lives of others. A surrendered believer is a powerful believer because God works mightily through those who trust and obey Him.